Business Roundtable is a unique collection of C-level executives from academia, business, community, and government who have diverse interests, diverse backgrounds, diverse industry verticals, but they're united around the mission that business is a force for good.
I think workforce development is a critical need for, you think about the state of Colorado being one of the more competitive markets in terms of maintaining and retaining talent. So I think workforce development, if you're wanting to grow your company and sustain that growth, I think it's going to be a critical need that we all have to solve.
The challenge for us as a state is how are we going to upskill our workforce so that we can fully develop our homegrown talent to meet the skill needs of today and the rapidly advancing skill needs for tomorrow.
What's really key about our pro-business Colorado and keeping it such is, one, we have to be affordable. We have to figure out a way to build more affordable housing, and that's part of what Colorado's about. I know everybody says that, but it's really critical. The other part is that we are business friendly, that we are not over-legislated. And right now we have a situation in Colorado where we could be over-legislated, or somebody could think we're over-legislated. And I think some of that comes from both policy that's been passed and what's going on, but also the fact that we're very pro-business. We like pro-growth. We enjoy that. And business as a force for good is really important to me because it's focusing primarily on how to make business better for everyone and how to have a positive effect.
Well, predictability is important for the construction businesses, really like all businesses. Has to do with, first and foremost, like any business, capital investment, decision making, and planning. Variance and unpredictability is called risk, and risk translates to the present tense in terms of higher anticipated costs, higher margin requirements, and a general lack of competitiveness.
One of the things that I think is unique for Colorado is the Western mindset that we adopt, which is a frontier spirit and willingness to try something new, to go out on your own and create your own path. And at the same time, the understanding that when you come to that river and you need to build a bridge, you need more than one person to build that bridge.
We're firm believers that business is truly a force for good. It is a core part of the community. It's critical to individuals' well-being, to a community's well-being, to a state's well-being. Businesses are responsible for the jobs that people hold, for places to gather, for the necessities that you need to live your daily life, and the luxuries that make it a little bit more special.
Colorado really is at a crossroads, and we're dealing with so many critical issues for the business community. Competitiveness, tax certainty, regulatory framework, infrastructure. And we bring together executives from academia, business, community, and government to work on these issues together. And we invite you to join us.
On behalf of the Colorado Business Roundtable Board of Directors, welcome, and thank you for being here. Your engagement today says a lot about how much we all care about Colorado's future. It's powerful to bring business, government, and community leaders into the same room at this moment for our state. My name is Carrie Goddard. I'm the General Manager of Operations for Chevron, overseeing production, facilities, pipeline, and remote operations across the state of Colorado. As the largest producer in the state, we're relentlessly focused on safe, reliable operations, continuous innovation, and responsible development, because that's what our employees, our neighbors, and our state expects from us. Chevron values our participation in COBRT. It's a practical partner on the issues that shape Colorado's economy: workforce readiness, modern infrastructure, regulatory certainty, and durable growth. What I appreciate most about COBRT's ability is to convene thoughtful, solution-oriented conversations that directly impact Chevron's employees, the communities where we operate, and the broader business climate. The Colorado Business Roundtable brings together leaders from business, academia, community, and government. Our mission is to strengthen Colorado's economy, improve quality of life for all Coloradans, and tell the story of how business is a force for good. COBRT is a trusted bridge between the public and private sector, and a voice that champions pragmatic problem solving. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our elected officials that are with us today, and to thank members of the Colorado General Assembly who are here. In particular, Representative Jennifer Bacon, House Assistant Majority Leader. Please stand. Representative Mandy Lindsay, House Majority Caucus Co-Chair. Thank you. And Senator Nick Henriksen, State Majority Whip. Thank you for your public service and for engaging with the business community. And to our local officials from Centennial and Littleton, will you please stand? We appreciate our legislators and local leaders for your dedication to our beautiful state. And on to today's State of the State event. A sincere thank you to our sponsors and Colorado Business Roundtable partners who made this program possible. Today's conversation reflects what COBRT does best, bringing leaders together to look around corners and help shape Colorado's long-term economic future. With that, I'm pleased to introduce my fellow COBRT board member, Lyle Wallace of Taft, who will share a few remarks as one of today's sponsors. Lyle, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I am Lyle Wallace. I'm the partner in charge of Taft's Colorado and Nevada offices, and we're really happy to be a sponsor here today. I'll tell you a little bit about Taft in about 10 seconds. We are a national full-service law firm. We have about 1,300 great attorneys around the country and offices here in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado Springs, and Aspen. And if you want to learn more about Taft, I'm happy to take you to lunch and tell you more about it. But I want to really talk about today is COBRT. And before we get Brian Lewandowski up here to make us all smarter, I want to talk about COBRT and the importance of organizations like COBRT. One thing that's always really impressed me and inspired me about Colorado and the Denver metro region is the way that different constituencies have come together in a very pragmatic way to try to solve the problems that our state and our region face. We are in a really challenging time right now, in my view. We've got fiscal and budgetary issues. We have the state of our current state of our politics. We have just the general pall of uncertainty, and it's become ever more challenging for us to address the problems that we face. And that's why organizations like COBRT are so important today. In the video, Debbie mentioned that COBRT brings together the leaders in the public sector and the private sector and the nonprofit community and academia to try to come together and collaborate on policy discussions to solve the issues that we face. And it's never been more important to have organizations like COBRT. If you're not already a COBRT partner or you want to learn more about COBRT, I would really encourage you to talk to Debbie or to any of the COBRT board members. And I'd like to ask that COBRT board members in the room please stand. So if you have the opportunity and want to learn more about COBRT and what COBRT does, please reach out to any of the board members that are in this room and they can tell you about their experience with COBRT. So now my sales pitch for COBRT is done and I have the pleasure of introducing Brian Lewandowski. Brian is what I would call a data super freak. He is the executive director of the Business Research Division of the CU Lead School of Business. He regularly provides economic analysis, works on policy studies, and probably most importantly, he's a contributor to the Governor's Revenue Estimating Advisory Committee, which is probably the most challenging job anybody has in Colorado right now. So with that, Brian's going to come up and provide some data and some of his thoughts from the most recent economic outlook report produced by LEAD. So please help me welcome Brian Lewandowski.
All right, thank you, Lyle. Thank you, Debbie, for the invitation to be here today, and I'll take data super freak any day of the week. I have about 10 minutes to share an economic update with you. So I'll call it a whisper of an economic update. If it was a drink, I would call it a LaCroix of economic updates. But we titled this Swimming Through Uncertainty, Understanding Today's Economic Currents. And I mean, uncertainty, I think, was the most overused word in 2025, aside from 6-7. And so I'm going to try and leave you with sort of 5 salient considerations today. And so number 1 is the economy is outperforming the expected underperformance. So I was trying to be a little bit cute there, because when we walked into 2025, there were expectations about an improving economy, a fast-growing economy. And then all of this uncertainty sort of boiled over, and there were worries about tariffs, there were worries about changes in spending, then there were worries about a government shutdown and how all of these things could perhaps derail economic growth. But perhaps in spite of, or despite all of those things, the economy continued to plug along. So first quarter last year was pretty lousy, dropped 0.6%. But after we got through that first quarter, there was this acceleration, 3.8% growth in the second quarter, 4.4% growth in the third quarter. And when we take a look at what drove that, we saw an increase in income, consumption, and even an improvement, much to my surprise, in net exports, where we saw exports grow and imports fall. So even with that, we're going to get the fourth quarter view in about a month. And even if it's phenomenal growth, it's going to be hard mathematically for 2025 to beat 2024's growth because of that weak first quarter. So we think last year came in around 2.3%, and we think that 2026 will actually grow a little bit faster. We're expecting about 2.4 or 2.5% growth. And a lot of this is driven off this idea of continuous growth in income and thus growth in consumption. So there are some benefits when we take a look at HR 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill, the expected increase in tax checks that come out this spring, and lower withholdings, so that's more disposable personal income, and people turn around and they spend that income. So what we see in the top 2 lines is income and consumption, and so they're both growing. We also see that the savings rate has dropped. So while delinquencies have elevated a little bit and household debt's pretty stable, the decrease in the savings rate could be some indication of households struggling a little bit and having to divert less to savings and more to consumption. So when we take a look at the consumer confidence survey that came out this week, it was a pretty lousy report. It dropped again, and it was actually the lowest level since 2014 in consumer confidence. And what consumers told the nation, is that they're worried about business conditions, and more importantly, they're worried about the labor market. And that's not unfounded. When we take a look at labor growth over the last year, it was a pretty slow growth for jobs. We ended up adding jobs at a pace of 50,000 per month, which is really the slowest growth that we've had outside of a recession in the past 2 decades. And when we take a look at the fourth quarter of last year, we had a decrease in jobs when we sum up the fourth quarter. And that's also the slowest quarterly growth that we've had outside of a recession. And when we take a look at where that growth came from, most of the growth came from healthcare and from tourism. Over half the growth came from healthcare. So there's a huge concentration. It's not broad growth, which I think is also a concern. And when we zoom into Colorado and compare that to the nation, we can see that Colorado is following a similar trend. We take a look at labor dynamics as the supply of labor being job openings, or the demand for labor being job openings and the supply of labor being unemployed. And coming out of the pandemic recession, we had about 2 job openings for every unemployed person. There's a huge imbalance. As employers, you saw this, the difficulty to find labor. And we've seen those lines converge. So we're seeing a tightening labor market where there's loosening job market where there's fewer job openings and more people unemployed. And that ratio now is 0.9 job openings for every unemployed person nationally and in Colorado. So we've seen our openings rate decline. We've also seen the quits decline. So people voluntarily leaving their jobs, fewer of them are doing that. And I think that's an indication that businesses and individuals are hunkering down in their positions a little bit, which is consistent with the Consumer Confidence Survey. So in Colorado, we see a few headwinds for labor supply. On the left side, we're looking at labor force. We saw this drop year over year after reaching record levels. And this is driven by a couple of things. One, people are retiring. They're aging in place in Colorado. They're exiting the workforce because they are retiring. But also we're seeing really slow net migration to the state. And that's been a really important piece of our labor supply, moving here from other states during their prime working age and sort of fueling some of that job growth. So there's that downward pressure on labor supply. We see our labor force participation rate also dropping. We're still one of the highest in the country, 8th highest. But you can see on the right-hand side that our labor force participation rate is also dropping. So that it shouldn't be a surprise then, based on what I said, that Colorado is really on track for some more subdued growth. This was a forecast we presented in December that we're expecting Colorado's jobs to grow by 0.6% this year. We just got the first reading on the full year of 2025 this week, and it came in at about 16,000 jobs. We think that'll be revised a little bit lower. But when we're talking about 16,000 jobs or 14,000 jobs, that's very flat growth and something that's very unusual in Colorado outside of a recession. And our expectations for growth are still driven off this idea that healthcare, private sector healthcare, is going to continue to fuel some of this growth. And I think one of the largest concerns about 2026 growth is this expected decrease in professional and business services, which embodies research and development, our high-tech industries, and a little bit of a pause in growth there. So I want to remind people about how great the economy has been, because we shouldn't lose sight of that. From 2009 to 2013, we were one of the fastest growing economies in the country, pretty much top 5 for every important metric that you look at. And when I take a look at the states that were in the top 10 over that sustained 15-year period, most states fell out of the top 10 for 1-year growth right now. And that's true for Colorado too. So out of those 7 metrics, 3/4 of the states fell out of the top 10. We're one of them. And when we take a look at our current rankings right now, you can see that we're sort of more in the middle of the pack when it comes to population growth, job growth, GDP growth, and income growth, and so on. We're leading the nation in employment growth. We're about tied with the nation in terms of GDP growth. We have a lower unemployment rate, something to celebrate there. So I'm going to sort of leave you with this idea of what has been foundational for Colorado or for the nation over the past decades. I've done resiliency work around Colorado, and I often ask this question: what did your predecessors do that led to the growth that we've had now? And we've got several iterations of this. You can change it up however you want to. On the bottom side, we have national things. On the top side, we have things specific to Colorado. And the chart is showing job growth over that period of time. So a couple of recessions show up on there. And I think it's sort of remarkable when we think about what sort of planning and leadership and funding drove the Eisenhower Tunnel. This idea of moving Stapleton out to the prairies. Think of all the people that had to come together, the leadership, the planning, the funding. I mean, these are a lot of big, hard things to do. And it doesn't just have to be the built environment. It could be the will to find incentives to lure companies to Colorado or to retain companies in Colorado. So I do leave you with this parting thought for you to think about, perhaps at your tables. What will drive the economy into the future? What are you doing today? What are your companies doing today? What is the leadership in Colorado doing today that we'll be talking about 15 years from now? So with that, I'm going to leave you, and you've got about 10 minutes or so to chat at your table, do a little bit of networking. And there's also a little trivia at your table. And if you fill this out, perhaps you could win a Southwest Airlines ticket. Thank you very much for your time.
Before we jump in with our panel, I want to make a couple other introductions and thank yous. These are some folks from the governor's team that we've had the great honor of working with the last several years during his time in office. Patty Salazar, Executive Director, Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies. Welcome, Patty. Eve Lieberman, I don't believe made it, but I was excited to introduce Eve Lieberman, the Executive Director of the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade, otherwise known as OEDIT. Eve's been a great friend to COBRT. Lee Wheeler Berliner, I know, is here, Managing Director of Colorado Workforce Development Council. Lee, where are you? Let's thank you today. Thank you, Lee. I'm grateful for our partnership. And then one person I also wanted to just give a quick shout out. There's a new Consul General in town representing the Consulate General of Canada in Denver, Sarah Quigley. Sarah, were you able to make it? All right, Sarah, welcome. It's always fun to talk about trade and friendship and allies with our friends to the north. So welcome to town, Sarah. With that, I want to go ahead and bring up our panel. They're going to be up here when the governor does his framing remarks, and then we'll get to the interactive part of today. But before I start, I just want to let everybody know how unique this event is. When I became president of the Roundtable about 6 years ago, this event was already happening, where there was an interesting conversation with the governor about his state of the state priorities. And I want to reflect that that's a testament to our governor, that he's willing to have these conversations. And so this event is different. It's very unique for COBRT, and I think that that's part of the reason why there's so much interest, and we keep growing this event every year. So we're grateful for that. We hope that Colorado's next governor will consider continuing this tradition. So to introduce our panelists, and I'll have them come up all at the same time, we've got a really interesting group of folks to ask some of these follow-up questions. Aaron Wagner is Senior Director of State and Local Governmental Affairs for Verizon's Mountain Market, leading state legislative strategy and executive advocacy across 8 states. She brings more than 15 years of public policy and government affairs experience, including prior roles with Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts and U.S. Congressman Lee Terry. Then we have George Sparks. George Sparks has served as president and CEO of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science since 2004. Following a distinguished career spanning 24 years at Hewlett-Packard and Agilent Technologies, and earlier service as an Air Force pilot and professor at the U.S. Air Force Academy. A distinguished USAF Academy graduate with advanced degrees from MIT, he is deeply engaged in science and education policy. George serves on several Colorado civic and education boards and founded the museum's Institute for Science and Policy. Rounding out the panel is David Coors. David was elected chairman and head of business relations of Molson Coors Beverage Company in May 2025, following senior leadership roles across the company, including executive chairman of Coors Spirits Company and vice president of Next Generation Beverages. He serves on multiple Molson Coors related boards, as well as several Colorado civic and community organizations. I was teasing David about whether the governor was a Coors Light guy or a Coors Banquet guy, so we might get the answer to that question today as well. Let's take a poll of the audience. Who prefers Coors Banquet? All right. I don't even think I have to ask the other. I'm a Coors Light. But anyway, everybody likes Coors in the room. Absolutely. So I'd like to everybody help me welcome the panelists to the stage. Next, we want to welcome Colorado's Governor Jared Polis. Governor Polis started his career as an entrepreneur and business person before entering public service. As governor, Jared Polis is focused on ensuring Colorado is the best place to start and grow a business, keeping Colorado's economy strong and competitive. In partnership with the legislature, Polis took steps towards cutting income and property taxes and protecting business certainty. Under the governor's leadership, Colorado continues to prioritize unlocking housing that Coloradans can afford near transit and job centers and connect Coloradans to the skills needed to fill in-demand jobs. Please join me in welcoming Governor Jared Polis.
So, yeah, and this is my last time addressing you as governor. So, and I will encourage the next governor, the governor-elect, who will have just taken office, whoever that is, to come to hear from this group and be part of this panel. It's certainly fun every year. I'll be brief because I know we want to get to the panel discussion. I recently gave my State of the State. I'm sure you all listened to all hour and a half of that. But in summary, we did talk about the dangerous impact the tariffs are having in Colorado. We did a deep analysis across our state. Just like you in the private sector, it increases our costs. Highways, houses, whatever we're building, often cost 6% more, depending on what it is. So our money doesn't go as far. I know that many of you are tired, as we are, of kind of government picking winners and losers through tariff policy and some of the other actions we see at the federal level. In our state, we're focused on housing and roads and transit. I mean, they all kind of go together, where people live, how they get where they want to go, avoiding congestion. And we're doing some major highway projects. We are doing additional transit, front range passenger rail, mountain rail, but also increased bus transit. We've unlocked over $470 million new funding for roads and bridges. We're paving a lot of unpaved roads. And then, of course, the other area we want to make sure we can transition to the next governor is we're doing a lot of great work in education and workforce, focused on how young people can get the skills they need to have a good job. If they're right out of high school, if they're not going to college, how do they have an apprenticeship or get a certification in something that matters to all of you, and be able to get a very good job? And we're really investing in industry-led workforce development through Opportunity Now. We need to make our job training system work for every Coloradan. So we're actually doing some systemic reforms. We currently have kind of a lot of this work around workforce in several different state agencies. We're going to focus on making it more unified and less redundant, and kind of look at higher ed and workforce development together. Even our higher ed partners, the universities, community colleges, they also need to be thinking about what skills people are getting that make them employable, what skills the private sector needs. And we are looking at really making sure that whatever entity is doing a lot of that training and owns it is accountable for better outcomes for the individual, for the learner, for our economy, for prosperity, for filling jobs that you have open. We have a lot of exciting work to accomplish in the 11 months I have ahead. And as business and community leaders, we need your help on these conversations. That's why I'm honored to speak with you today. I would just add, one of the biggest challenges we face is housing. We've been working very hard to reduce paperwork, making it easier to approve housing. That work continues, making it easier to subdivide lots. We're working on making zoning less onerous for housing authorities and school districts that want to be part of the housing solution and own land and want to have housing on that land. So these efforts are very important to affordability in the future of our state. Thank you.
And then we're going to start the framing today looking at the beginning of your term, Governor, and reflecting a bit on the past, what lessons maybe have been learned, how do we think about the past as we're looking towards future priorities. And it's been an interesting journey. When you first started as governor, it was the first time that both branches of the legislature were blue. So that was an interesting change. When you first started as governor, President Trump was president back then. Then you had President Biden. Now we're seeing a different type of leadership perhaps out of the White House than you saw in his first term. So a lot of changing landscape, not only here in the state, but federally as well, to dive into. So let's jump in. The first question I'm going to ask, then I'm going to turn it over to some of the panelists. But just 1 year into your first term, some of us were talking about this today, the impact of COVID and what that must have been like just 1 year into your term. Like the rest of the world, there was no playbook for COBRT. Businesses were trying to figure out how to stay in business. Families were trying to figure out how to educate their children. Governors were trying to figure out how do you balance the needs of a community with the needs of business and the economy, and there's no playbook. I'd love for you to just reflect on that period of time and what lessons perhaps you learned during that leadership time.
Well, first of all, I'm very proud of Colorado, including the business community. We had one of the shortest shutdowns of any state. We were open, obviously different businesses going back in different ways. I think one, and we had one of the 10 states with the lowest death rates as well. And frankly, our tourism did well during that era because we had outdoor tourism is one of our big areas. So maybe the Denver Art Museum probably didn't do well during that period, but Eagle County, Garfield County, all those areas did very well. Sometimes it was second homeowners who were out there for the whole time, for the year, spending their money in local stores. Other times it was people that were vacationing there. So on the metrics, we had a very good recovery. We didn't hit some of the lows in employment because we kept many key sectors open entirely throughout the pandemic, like construction. Some states had a pause on that, and we came out strong. I think in terms of lasting impact, in the United States, a lot of folks, and this is obviously more of a Denver specific issue, but yeah, certainly the future of kind of in-person work is changed because a lot of companies said, hey, why am I paying for all this overhead when I can get the same productivity for like half the office overhead? And, employees come in 2-3 days a week. So others are, 5 days a week, but that has an effect on downtown, retail businesses. And so that's what Denver in particular is struggling with right now, very high commercial vacancy rates. And I think they'll slowly decrease over time, but I think that, many companies obviously don't want to pay for unnecessary overhead either. So they're kind of weighing that. And that led to more corporate profitability. Not necessarily immediately because leases had to roll off, but obviously, companies can grow faster and reinvest if they have a smaller footprint per employee.
I think my golf game improved during COVID, which was nice. We also had our first prohibition period, didn't we, David, during COVID, a 3-hour or so prohibition period in Denver.
It was a tough 3 hours.
I suspect sales skyrocketed after the prohibition was lifted.
Well, yeah, we also have now, for instance, permanent legacies. Now you can order alcoholic drinks to go from restaurants. That was for no good reason, but that was not allowed in our state before. And then that we did that temporarily, and then that worked so well as permanent. So you can order, dinner with drinks to go or take out as well. Things like that.
Absolutely.
Outdoor dining, more restaurants have that now too.
Right. I think it spurred a lot of interesting, there's some silver linings to learning some new practices during COVID. Aaron, bringing you into the conversation, Governor, one of the threads I think through your time in office has also been a prioritization of civility and collaboration. And I know Aaron has a question for you on that.
Nationally, you partnered with Utah Republican Governor Spencer Cox on your Disagree Better campaign, trying to tamp down political rhetoric and really get people thinking how to have respectful conversations, probably something that we need a lot more of today still. What are some key lessons that you learned from that initiative, and how can ordinary citizens continue to disagree better?
So yeah, I got to work closely and still do with Spencer Cox, governor of Utah, on Disagree Better, kind of elevating the importance of disagreeing well. Now, everybody's not supposed to agree on every topic. That life would be very boring if that was the case. But there are constructive ways to disagree. It starts with listening, understanding where the other person is coming from. Too often in today's politics, we see unhealthy ways of disagreeing, attacking or denigrating somebody who might happen to disagree with personally, or attacking their motives. So I think the more we can get issues out there and discuss them, the better. It's how we always try to approach every issue, whether we agree or disagree with people that I'm talking to. And we did now have that work in an ongoing nonprofit, as well as a number of other groups nationally that are doing this. There's a Dignity Index we work with, Better Angels. There's a number of NGOs that are continuing this work, and we're continuing to boost and trying to make the civil discourse more constructive.
One of the areas that's brought up from time to time from the business community, and Brian, appreciate your presentation today, are business rankings. And sometimes there's disagreement on which ranking is the most critical for Colorado, which ones business leaders look at that really hits home. George, I know you're going to touch a little bit about those business rankings.
Yeah, before I do that, I want to reflect a little personally about our governor here. 25 years ago, Raleigh Heath was the nominee for governor of Colorado. I was his education chair, and we were big into ed reform then. And Raleigh said, there's this bright young man now that has started a charter school and just got elected to the State Board of Education. We should put him on our education committee. So we did. And it quickly became apparent that he knew what the heck he was talking about, and we took his advice. And that young man was Jared Polis. And
hopefully you didn't take my advice all the way to 39%, did you?
Well, the ed part we did that well. So sadly, Raleigh didn't become governor, and the education.
Josie, you're great. He actually was. We had him on our community college board during my term, and they're great. Josie's on our state land board as we speak.
They're both fabulous people, and the ed wars still are raging out there. And you've gone on to a distinguished career. So Colorado's had a lot of really good governors, and I put you as among the best. I think your leadership during COVID was exemplary. You're a business guy. You understand what makes business tick. When you say something, you stick to your word. You have a North Star. Sometimes we don't know where that is. It seems to move around a little bit, but you clearly have one. And I want to thank you for your leadership in Colorado. So personally, thank you very much. So rankings, everybody loves to argue about rankings, whether it's football or restaurants or whatever. You mentioned in your state address, the U.S. News and World Report rankings. Others have come in more mixed. How do you think about these things, and how does it affect your policies that we have and the business community in general?
Yeah, so we cited U.S. News and World Report. They're a good, well-respected outside source. We're the fourth best business environment of any state. That's overall business environment. I think where Colorado has a harder time is cost and affordability. Now, it shouldn't be a shock. Generally, the states with better business environments, at least over time, do have higher costs. It's because there's a lot of jobs and people want to live there. So low-cost areas are traditionally less prosperous, less successful areas with high unemployment rates, right? I mean, the fact that you need $600,000 average home price in every metro area. I'm going to talk in a moment about what we're doing to tackle affordability. That has become a significant problem. But obviously, it's also an indicator of the area's success. There are plenty of areas in the country where you can get homes for $150,000, $175,000 because the problem is nobody wants to live there because there's no jobs. And that's not what we aspire to. What we aspire to is removing barriers to housing, because that is, in many ways, what's holding us back. When I do, when I work with the Office of Economic Development and Eve Lieberman on attracting companies to Colorado, we score well on nearly every category. Low property taxes, low income taxes, good regulatory environment. But the one that we don't is affordability. And so, companies say, I really want to be in Colorado, but, my employees can't afford to live there. So that's really what we have, in many ways, for the last several years, taken as our marching orders. And I say several years because it's not like there's one silver bullet and all of a sudden housing's affordable. Housing is a function of supply and demand, like anything. We don't want to reduce demand. That means that, and actually, by the way, we just got news, Colorado has now surpassed 6 million people for the first time in our history. So even as many states like Texas are shrinking, we're continuing to grow here. But what we need is to unleash housing. And so how do we stop all the different bureaucracy that's in the way of housing being built? And we've really been focusing on that. So now people can build accessory dwelling units by right. There's multifamily zoning in many parts of our cities. There's no more government-imposed parking requirements that force you to have more parking than you want. We're now going to make it easier to subdivide lots. So this effort continues to try to allow supply to keep up with demand to make Colorado more affordable. It's broader than just the cost of the house itself. It's also homeowners insurance. We're very focused on that as well. That's been a function of fire and hail risk increases. And we're taking steps to deal with those, both hail resistant roofs, especially in the Eastern Front Range, getting credit for additional fire risk reduction work in reducing homeowners insurance rates. So those are all of the areas. And of course, we're all subject to the national financing environment and other things that affect housing, but we don't really control those.
David, bringing you into the conversation, rankings are just a reflection of economic competitiveness. A lot of us talk about that issue quite a bit, depending on what industry vertical you're in. But we want Colorado to remain competitive, of course. David, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first off, Governor, thank you so much for being here. We know you have plenty of options on where to be, and myself and this business community appreciate you being here. Speaking of affordability and economic competitiveness, certainly it's a hot topic nationally and certainly locally, and the individual is feeling it. Businesses are feeling it as well. Increased costs. You mentioned your costs going up as well as the CEO of our state. And the regulatory environment is challenging, and every day businesses across Colorado are making decisions on how to better their business. And so question to you is a carry on to the last question is, what do you think are the important steps today and into the future to allow for Colorado to be competitive, for businesses to invest, innovate, and grow, which leads to job growth and prosperity across the state?
Well, one thing we're working on, and I'm glad Patty Salazar is here from our Division of Regulatory Affairs. We're working with Debbie and others in the Business Coalition to streamline and reduce state regulations. And so that's kind of a cross-government effort. And if there's any, oftentimes people will tell us to fix something and we'll say, I'm sorry, that's the city that did that. It's not. But if it is us, we want to fix it right away, whether it's so please let Patty know or me know. We now turn around, for instance, everything on affordable housing. We've got it down to 33 days, down from over 90 days. So we want to, make sure that we are on those shot clocks and acting quickly on any type of approval that might be needed. Some of them are federal approvals, like obviously one of the more onerous ones is the clean air permitting. That's a EPA requirement. We administer it, but we've worked very hard on reducing the backlog there. I think that costs, the tariffs have translate directly into costs, depending on what your line of work is. Wages have also gone up, which is not a bad thing. Obviously, workers putting money back in the economy. But, because of the housing crisis and the cost of living, it's often hard to hire people here in Colorado. So that's one of the reasons we're focused on expanding housing, as well as training for the people that are already here. Because I don't know if I have the updated statistic, but until recently, and it's probably similar to this, there's actually quite a bit more job openings than there are on unemployed people, like 1.5 job openings for every unemployed person. But there's a skill mismatch. The people that are unemployed don't necessarily have the skills of the jobs that are being posted today. So we have to upskill people of all ages, obviously starting with younger Coloradans, high school, community college, making sure they get skills that fill those jobs that we know are open today and tomorrow.
Great. We're going to shift a little bit now and talk more about current day, what's the next priority.
In addition to number 4 overall business environment, we're actually number 1 for women-owned businesses in Colorado. So we're very excited about that distinction as well.
We'll take the win. Absolutely. And I think you touched on some of the rankings that I hear about from folks about regulatory environment that comes up from time to time. People might not know about what Patty and her department are doing. Hopefully that starts a trend with other regulatory agencies that want to work with business. That's my hope. So again, it's fair. It's a fair question to ask business about the specificity of what needs to be changed. So I'm looking out at the audience too. As you hear about this, if this isn't on your radar, feel free to reach out because we are working closely with Patty on that work and the governor. So appreciate that. Looking ahead, one of the biggest issues that I hear about a lot of times is regular people, business owners, leaders are worried about the budget deficit. I'm sure this is what you're worried about as well. Under your leadership, Colorado cut income taxes 3 times and property taxes 5 times, yet fees have increased significantly. Federal funding is declining and Medicaid costs are rising sharply. The cost of programs enacted by the legislature is outpacing incoming state revenues. Many argue the deficit stems not only from changes at the federal level, but also from spending decisions made at the state level. What is the current budget deficit and how are you prioritizing long-term fiscal stability for Colorado?
Well, different people portray this in different ways, but I submitted a balanced budget, 0 deficit, which I do every year. We submitted that November 1st. The legislature will have to also pass a balanced budget. I sure hope it's largely based on my budget, but they always make some changes. So Colorado will have a balanced budget, and it's going to be higher than last year. It goes up by the rate under Tabor of inflation plus growth. I mean, I guess there are those that wanted to go up more than that. But it's not exactly a deficit when it's a reduction in the rate of increase, and the real rate of increase is still, exceeds inflation. So it stymies me a little bit when people say there's a deficit. Now, it's true that for this year alone, we don't have a Tabor surplus for refunding. That's because of HR 1 that made real-time concurrent tax changes in Colorado. It took us from a $400 million surplus in the current year to a deficit. But that was largely a front-loaded effect. And we, again, if the economy remains strong, like it is, or reasonably strong, we will again have a surplus next year, including refunds for every taxpayer. And that would be more a function of national economic conditions. If there's a downturn, that obviously goes away.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Do you have any advice for folks who are concerned about a structural deficit, adding new programs, perhaps that were added during COVID when there was one-time funds, and then there's sort of this backfill of, okay, now we have a program we've got to keep?
It's not so much. I mean, sure, we can cut programs. We're always happy to. There's, we cut many of them, but we have to get the legislature to agree. But all that doesn't add up to a lot of money. The real money in our budget is in two things: education, and we don't want to cut that. And we're proud of actually progress we've made. We've decreased class size on average by one student across the state. We now have preschool and kindergarten full day for free. More resources in the school district, better teacher pay. But the other big one is healthcare. And so that's the one where we're not getting better outcomes for spending more, which, as you know, in business, it's just dumb. So we're spending more and more without making what some call cuts to it. Again, I would call it a reduction in the rate of increase. The Medicaid costs would go up 11% this year. We're saying only make it go up 5%. But it would be one thing if we were all living longer and super healthy, but America as a whole gets a raw deal on healthcare. We spend almost twice as much per capita on healthcare, and we're in the middle of the pack, if not lower, on results. So, I mean, I cited in my State of the State, Japan as one example, average lifespan 6 years longer, spends 45% less per person than we do, and that's with an older population. So it shouldn't be rocket science. We can't fix that all as a state, but clearly we can't just throw money at healthcare and expect people are going to somehow be healthier.
You alluded to the federal government. We can't fix everything, just the state. We have a federal layer as well. George, speak to that in terms of federal uncertainty.
Yeah, Brian kind of stole my thunder here. I was going to nominate uncertainty as the word of the year because it affects all of us, whether you're a museum scientist waiting for their grant to come in or not, or a nonprofit that's serving, underserved people, or the head of a hospital waiting to see what your Medicaid reimbursement rate is. What can you and the executive branch do to help reduce this? Because this uncertainty creates anxiety among everybody in this room and all those people walking around out there. What's your role as a leader?
It actually creates, we're in many ways the front line of that anxiety because many of our state programs are funded federally. And so one day they're cut off. No explanation. Next day, a court says it's back on, or somebody in the White House changes their mind. So we've had many different furloughs, and we've had to take, because we're optimistic it would come back. We've carried some programs on our books for a few weeks till it came back, and we have no idea. So I mean, it's very strange because we were under, whether a Republican or Democrat in Washington, we've always considered them our partners, working towards our mutual prosperity. I think there are some of those there now that kind of view states as adversaries rather than partners. So we certainly don't have any solution. We are subject to that very same uncertainty that you cited in a big way. And that has a tough effect on state government too. I mean, it burns people out, people who don't know if their job's going to be there. It makes it really tough. Our universities are another example, really tough for them. Those are our state universities, CSU, CU. So I don't have a silver bullet other than that we're always, polite, extend a hand, talk to people, members of the cabinet all the time, and just always put our best foot forward.
David, Molson Coors has laid out a comprehensive sustainability strategy that covers climate, water, packaging, and agricultural sourcing. Agriculture is an important industry for our state, and Molson Coors is really one of those companies that I think of when we talk about business as a force for good. I know you've got a question on agriculture for the governor. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, certainly the agricultural community in Colorado is a cornerstone of our state and drives so much for this state. And we believe strongly in protecting those rural communities. They're so central to our food security, our food export, which drives value,
and the protection of our natural resources, which we care about. So my question to you, we work with our partners, ag partners all the time. We use barley to make our beer, which is so important to us and many other businesses in the state. What policies do you think are most important to support those rural communities as you see this drive towards urban growth? And they're challenged with workforce challenges, cost challenges, a volatile market rates for their products. So what do you think policy-wise is the most important to help drive longevity and multi-generational businesses in rural communities?
Hopefully you're using as many Colorado grown ingredients as you can. Agriculture is not only a dynamic and strong economic sector in Colorado, and that's across many kinds of farming and ranching, but our farmers and ranchers are also the primary stewards of our lands, of our grasslands, of our public lands as well. They lease leaseholds from the federal government, from the state land board. So it's an incredibly important sector for urban Colorado as well as rural Colorado, because of the food supply chains that touch every resident of our state, if only as a consumer, but also in many ways with value adds on the supply chain like Coors and many other brewers. We have been focused on several things with regard to rural economic vitality. One is our Rural Jumpstart program, which helps diversify the economy and get local small businesses launched in communities across rural Colorado. We focused our road paving efforts and road infrastructure efforts. Healthcare. Communities dry up when they don't have access to healthcare. And so we have put a major priority on maintaining our rural healthcare providers, which is very challenging. We recently worked with the administration and Dr. Oz to get a $200 million a year grant for rural healthcare transformation. But when we're designing how we do our payments in Colorado, we always have the health of our rural providers in the forefront of that. And then, of course, education. We've been very successful in getting many of our rural school districts partnering with the local community colleges, graduating students that are either on their way or have associate's degrees or skills that are meaningful, whether they stay in their area or not. Like one example is, again, for rural communities to thrive, in addition to having healthcare, they have to make sure that parents know that their kids get a good education, or parents are going to go elsewhere. So attracting and retaining teachers, as you can imagine, it can be challenging in some areas of Colorado. So we found the greatest success with students that grow up in an area that are more likely to return there. So we've worked in partnership with our universities and community colleges where many students are able to do teacher internships while they're in high school, get some college credit, go finish it off, and then return to community to teach that they came from. So really opportunities like that are part of what we need to think about when we think of Colorado for all and making sure that our rural communities are a big part of our prosperity.
I know we've only got a couple more minutes of your time. I want to make sure I have a chance to thank you for your veto on the Worker Protection Act. That would have significantly changed Colorado's labor market and affected every industry vertical. And we're seeing that bill already back at the legislature this year. I don't know if you have any feedback for where you think that might go, and if you're still against that in principle.
Well, no, I mean, it hasn't changed. I don't know why they're bringing back the same bill. They know I don't support, but encourage you to obviously work with proponents there. What matters more than this year is kind of what the long-term outlook looks like for that. So if you can figure out something that's, the last one is 72 years now, we got to get something that's stable for a long period of time.
Aaron, bringing you back in for your final question. I know you have two prepared, but we're trimming down because of lack of time. So you can pick which one you prefer.
Sounds good. I will kind of weave back to what you talked about in your opening remarks about your executive order on streamlining Colorado's workforce and talent systems and trying to better align education, training, and employer needs. What's your view on the role for higher education? You touched on that a little bit, but I'd love to hear more about how you see higher education playing a role in setting Colorado up for economic competitiveness.
Yeah, higher ed is part of that. Everything from higher ed, almost it's a given because it's so big in and of itself. So what we often talk about is the plus side, but of course higher ed, but the plus side including apprenticeships, skills academies, workforce centers, school districts, all of the many ways that people could get skills. Of course, our higher ed continues to be the largest contributor to human capital across our community college and college system. And by looking at it together with other ways we prepare our workforce, we want to look at value, right? ROI. How do we make sure that the individual learner, of course, gets what they paid for, but also taxpayers are getting what we pay for in terms of positive results for the learner and from the economy from our higher ed partners.
And George, final question from you on energy, one of our favorite topics that we share.
Yeah, I think this is one of the areas where it's changing so rapidly that we're going to have to change our current policies. Things like data centers are springing up everywhere, water, energy. How do you anticipate this changing as far as policy? Will we protect the environment and provide jobs?
There's a lot going on. So data centers, very energy intensive usage 24/7. That can be helpful in building new capacity when they're located near existing transmission or generation. What none of us would want is for businesses or individuals to have to pay higher rates because we're bringing online data center somewhere where the cost of the transmission is socialized across the existing customer base. So that's what we have to be very wary of. Again, there are ways that large load users could successfully be integrated into the grid in a way that reduces rates and increases stability, but it's also very easy to go the other way and have them brought in ways that decrease stability and increase rates. And so that's the very detailed work that the Public Utilities Commission is doing. I think that states that are falling all over themselves for data centers are frankly making a huge potential mistake that could lead to higher rates for all their ratepayers. And we want to do this in a thoughtful way.
And David, I'm going to give the final closing question for you to help us wrap up our time.
All right. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for your service. You've seen a lot over the years in your leadership, and it's just a wonderful, cherished state, so diverse, so dynamic. Would love to hear your advice for future leaders, current and future leaders, of something that you've learned over your tenure. And while you think about that answer, I also want to give another plug for your Disagree Better, which Aaron brought up earlier, because I really was drawn to that. I think it's so important for us. Getting together is very important. The one critique I have is those videos at the dinner table. You just didn't have an ice cold beer. But other than that, I thought it was perfect.
You got one for us?
You got it.
I think you'll get a delivery this afternoon, probably.
So, I think, look, I think it's similar to many of you that might be in executive leadership roles. You want to focus on operational excellence, and at the same time, you want to have a finite number of big things you want to get done. In my case, when I ran for office the first time, free preschool and kindergarten, we got that done. Work on healthcare, reducing costs against the national tide, very challenging, but we got some important things done for our state. And then reducing the income tax, which we're able to do 3 times, twice at the ballot box, once through the legislature when there's a surplus. We are trying to seek another income tax reduction with the current legislature. We'll see where that goes. I mentioned that in my State of the State as well. So, if you focus on 15 things, you do them poorly. So overall operational excellence, and we do this across our 19 departments of state government. We have wildly important goals, or WIGs, in each area. We have a public dashboard. Each agency is accountable. I'm part of that WIG setting process each year, and then our administration's goals. So, again, it's not too different than being a CEO of any enterprise. Again, overall operational excellence and focus on the big transformative things you want to get done.
Great, thank you. Just a quick remark, we want to thank the governor for his time. We look forward to continued collaboration. When we disagree with the governor, we always do it respectfully, but we do appreciate the chance to work with not only the governor, but members of his agency as well. And I think when we think about business as a force for good, we need more prioritization around competitiveness, business, and knowing that a thriving business sector actually supports these public goals. We need the business sector to have profits, to thrive, in order to have the workforce that we need, the career paths we need, and of course, the Colorado of opportunity for all as well. So let's give a round of applause to our governor and thank him for his time today. Thank you. All right, thank you, panelists. Next, I want to bring up Carla Nugent to the stage, who is our current board chair. She's going to have a few closing remarks for us. As Carla's coming to the stage, I just want to reflect again that this is such an interesting time of collaboration. I don't believe any other group gets the governor to come and actually answer questions from the stage. Several years ago, it used to be more of a fireside chat with one person. And I think 3 years ago, we expanded it because actually having business leaders and community leaders on the stage, sometimes it's academic leaders, asking the questions themselves, I think is so powerful. So we look forward to continuing collaboration with all of you as we continue to convene some of the work that we're doing behind the scenes, as you heard, with the Department of Regulatory Agencies and Patty, with Eve Lieberman, with workforce systems. Excited to have your continued engagement. And with that, I'm really excited. This was a good quick change too, to introduce Carla Nugent. She is the Chief Revenue Officer at Lowenbrow and our new chair of the Colorado Business Roundtable Board of Directors. Carla is a respected business leader and a workforce innovator, and she does all this without skipping a beat on her own business interests with Lowenbrow, doing incredible work around the country. So help me welcome Carla Nugent to close us out.
Thank you. Thank you. For those that I've known for the last 25 years here in this work sector, you might have known me as the founding partner of Wayfield Group. But now we are starting to rebrand to become a national name and part of Lowenbrow. We're a multi-craft contractor for industrial and critical infrastructure. So get used to the new name, still getting used to the new name, but we're super excited. Gives us even a bigger pulse on the multi-states that we were working in before, having even a broader reach like many of the businesses here. I'm grateful to serve this year as the chair for Colorado Business Roundtable. We're at a meaningful and pivotal moment here in Colorado. We have the final year of Governor Polis's terms. We've got major workforce, housing, and competitiveness decisions are underway. And so our board in 2026 is focused on leading with this long-term mindset. We have making our decisions that are grounded in data-driven insights and analysis. And we want to turn this business leadership coalition that we have and partnership that we have into real measurable impact for our state. COBRT's approach is rooted in this ABCG model. You might have heard Debbie reference this before, but it's academia, business, community, and government working together. And when we pull together and we are working on a common vision for our state, we're very, very impactful. And so as a board, we're committed to ensuring business is a force for good, this collaboration over polarization, and outcomes that strengthen our economy and our quality of life. COBRT is meaningful to me. I've been involved in the last 5 years in the board and on the executive team. Business is this flywheel to our economy, and business can be this force for good. And so COBRT brings together all these different industries. If you look at those that are in the room, those that are part of our organization, it's really neat to be able to connect on common issues. And sometimes you don't think those commonalities are there amongst our different industries and you're just at it alone. There's a lot of common issues, and it helps us to stand apart as an organization when we bring these leaders together that can combine profits and purpose, and it can go hand in hand. I also have a deep personal passion for workforce solutions, involved with many appointed positions here with our state, homegrown initiatives in construction. And so it's been neat to be part of expanding access to meaningful careers for those that really didn't maybe have an opportunity or think that they had career pathing past an entry-level job, and also helping employers build the talent that we need. Workforce engages the best. Solutions are created through this ABCG lens. So employers define the skills that we need, educators align our pathways, government enables coordination, and our community partners expand that access. And so for 2026, our focus and strategic priorities, our framework is really deepening this impact of Colorado Business Roundtable. Our first and foremost is workforce solutions as our central priority. We want to elevate employers as co-creators of talent. Sometimes we have been referenced as just consumers of talent. And I know so many businesses here, business leaders, business owners, and founders that we are investing, training, and sometimes innovating outside of some of the traditional pathways. And so connecting this so we are collaborating and building something together. This strengthening our partnerships between business, higher education, K through 12, and our workforce systems is essential. And then aligning all of these systems, as Governor Polis talked about, some of this revamp that is being done with workforce and our education, and just that how that can be effective and we can be responsive and it can be accessible. Now more than ever, right, business, we have access into our schools and talking to our next generation into all of our industries. Additionally, COBRT is focused on reducing the cost and complexity of regulation. We hit on that a little bit today, and strengthening our competitiveness. That is essential, right? We've always drawn a great crowd to Colorado with this environment and all of the options we can do for leisure and for fun and for hobbies here. But how do we keep it competitive? Because as the costs go up, it's expensive to live. There's a lot of things that are challenges for us and for our employees. And so that housing affordability, we believe, is a workforce and an economic issue that we'll be focused on. And we want to do all of this through COBRT's data-driven approach, research partnerships, employer surveys and economic analysis, and using evidence to inform policy and action. And so I'd like to recognize some of our Business Roundtable leadership that has served our organization. First, acknowledging our executive committee for 2026. And also our full, thank you. And also our full Colorado Business Roundtable Board of Directors. Collectively, their leadership, strategic guidance, the time, insight, and commitment that they give, they really bring diverse perspectives across different industries and sectors. And again, it's so neat when you get everybody together and you hear these commonalities and things that are a pain point and a challenge. And when we come to solutions and communicate and get all these lanes together with government and private sector, it's quite powerful. Strong organizations are built on thoughtful leadership transitions. And so I would like to invite Dave Shunk, President and CEO of Volunteers of America, to the stage to be recognized and thank him. Dave could come up. Dave served as our chair for Colorado Business Roundtable here for 2024 and 2025. Just a few highlights. He's just had steady and collaborative leadership. He's had a commitment to strengthening this organization, a strong voice. He's passionate about Colorado Business Roundtable. He set us up for a successful 2026 and moving forward. I don't know, his energy and passion and heart is going to be very hard to follow, but we've been very blessed by the time and care that he's given this organization. So thank you, Dave. All right, so we covered a lot of different information today. We want to thank you all and the leadership in the room. Thank you to Governor Polis for participating and engaging directly with our Colorado business and civic leaders. Thank you to our panelists, our moderators, for just a thoughtful, forward-looking discussion. And to our board team that put this event together. I know sometimes we squeeze that in at the end, but there's a lot to coordinate all of these events, and we really work to add value, give you data, get us all convening, collaborating, and looking at the future and tackling challenges together and celebrating the wins together. And so thank you for our board, our sponsors, our partners in this event, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for being a force for good.